good afternoon, and good evening wherever you're tuning in from across the country and around the world. This is the Life Midwest Podcast, a social sciences podcast that is not a COVID cast, but man, not only can I say cast a lot of times in one sentence, we do talk about the pandemic quite a lot here on the show, and today's no different. In fact, I want to talk about the ramifications of the pandemic. I think a lot of people went through some very life-changing situations, being locked in their own home, or being confined to their four walls. That is the life choices that they have made, which is their household and their house. And I want to talk about that today because there's a bigger picture thing that this is going to lead into another topic that we're going to cover next week, which I'll get more into. But I think it's important to cover this too, because I think a lot of people have had a realization. I think there's two different types of people. I think the first type has had the realization that I'm going to be talking about today. And I think the second type hasn't. And I want to talk to both groups. I think there's a message for both of those people today. So I want to take you back to March of 2020 when it all went down, right? That's when shit all went down. When I first got the phone call from my boss that our store was shutting down for 2 weeks and asked me to stay at home as much as I possibly could, and I would be updated when she had more news, I don't think anyone knew, myself included, that 2020 would end up being considered the lost year by so many. Obviously, those 2 weeks turned into until further notice, which turned into working from home until further notice. And while my homebodied ass was elated at the thought of never having to interact with people or society ever again, looking back, not everyone had this experience, right? I think a lot of people use work to get away from their home life, which sucks, which is sad, but I think it's true. I think it's something, I think it happens a lot. I think there's a lot of people who live life that way. And sure, we can sit here and dissect like, life choices, and they decided this and they decided that. But I think there's a bigger, does that mean that we shouldn't have empathy for these people? Does that mean that we shouldn't have sympathy for these people? I don't think it works like that. So for many, their lives were changed. And for many others, their life was ruined. Or maybe this was the year that they realized that their life had been ruined for a lot longer. And now they have time and space to think about that and evaluate all these decisions that led to the fact that they are quarantined in a house that they can't stand to be in. And I want to be very explicit here. I'm clearly not talking about like, oh man, I should have knocked out that wall 15 years ago. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about the relationships that these people have with their spouses or domestic partners or their children, if they have any. I'm talking about those people. You go to work and it provides this balance, right? Maybe you don't even realize that you're sick of these people, but you going to work provides this balance that you didn't know that you needed. Probably because you're working so much that you don't even think about like, man, this is providing such a great balance. You probably don't go to therapy. Not everyone goes to therapy. Most people don't go to therapy. Stay tuned for part 3 of this episode. But I digress. To dive in a little bit more about what I'm talking about, I want to read an excerpt from theguardian.com, and I'm going to link this full article in the podcast description. It says, "It comes from an awareness of your own freedoms and how life will end for you one day. That journey may reveal to us that where there was structure and familiarity, now there is mystery, unfamiliarity, a sense of discomfort, and a feeling of like somehow things don't fit so well anymore." Maybe I just read that to you and you're like, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but maybe that's it. I'm not sitting here trying to convince people that you should hate your life or that you should reevaluate your life decisions. But I'm saying this has been something that I think has impacted a lot of people. Furthermore, it may not seem like it, but there is so much to unpack there. Firstly, I think we as humans become conditioned. We're creatures of habit, and it's inevitable that we fall into some sort of routine. Get up, go to work, come home, help kids with homework, help the wife make dinner, whatever. Even if you're someone who hates routines, you're in a routine of not being in one. Not to create a paradox here, but you're welcome. So when that everyday life that we built for ourselves and become numb to changes in a dramatic way, we immediately become uncomfortable, right? We don't want to be stuck in this house. Not because we've subconsciously built our lives in a way that we have to, have a balance where we have separation from it, but because most of us fear change, let alone the end of something. For dramatic change like this, it probably feels to most people like having water splash on your face to snap you out of unconsciousness. In fact, maybe we get so numb to life and the life that we've built that we're just on autopilot, and we are figuratively unconscious. And I there's a lot of points that I'm going to make today that I feel like are really important, but here's a big one. Those who are just on this autopilot and they are just subconsciously numb to everything that they deal with on a daily basis. Change is hard. Change sucks. It's hard to start. It's hard to stop doing something that you're so used to doing. Again, we're creatures of habit. And sometimes it's just easier to make that one little change that brings us further away from what we actually wanted to do with our lives. Let's say that you're really passionate about history, so you want to go to school to become a history teacher. Well, then you and your current girlfriend at the time have a baby. So now you have to, your parents, both parents want you to get married. Okay, so get married, even though you're just boyfriend and girlfriend. Okay, now you have a kid. Okay, now you have to take care of that kid. So you put college on hold. You just get this other job in the meantime. Well, that other job really takes off and you end up, having this really long, successful career, but you're not happy. You see how this chain of events can happen? And sure, they might stem all off of one thing, but it's still that group of choices that progressively brought you further away from what actually made you happy. That's what I'm talking about. That doesn't mean that we're stuck there, though, right? We're not. And I think that's the second group of people that we're talking about today, right? Again, first group is people who have made life choices and the pandemic has made or indirectly helped them to realize that they are not happy with their lives. The second group is people that have been afforded time to explore their passions, and some really great things have been born from that. And so I think there are people in the first group who look at people in the second group and they're like, oh, fuck those people. Why? Why can't we be happy for someone else's success or the fact that someone else found their calling in the middle of a pandemic? We talked to Laura last week about how her photography business and how she didn't really register. She didn't even officially register for her LLC until everything was shut down. The pandemic afforded Laura this amazing opportunity to go forth and capture happiness and love and people and just do some of what she feels is the best work of her life. Everyone should be afforded that opportunity to do the best work of their life. And I think the pandemic has been a great thing in that. I think so many people talk about the pandemic and everyone gets, oh my God, quarantine. Oh my God, this, that, whatever. But imagine if you actually enjoyed your life or the things or the passions that you did, or maybe the passions that you put away when you were younger. And you had this was your chance to get that passion back out of the closet and say, you know what? I haven't played guitar since I was 25, but I'm going to give it another shot. Why not? This is your chance. For some, it made life harder and they had to learn how to use a computer because they were working remotely from home. You hate computers. I understand that not everyone loves computers. Trust me. I get that more than just about anybody else as somebody who helps people who are struggling with computers. But what I'm getting at is that if you're not a Laura Skiba, then that doesn't mean that you should hold contempt for the Laura Skibas. Even if you don't take the time to go and pull out your old passions or discover new ones, why be angry at those that did and are happier and better for it? I think the pandemic was a lot more of a silver lining than a lot of people think. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk more about why. Stick around. Welcome back to the Life Midwest podcast, everybody. The podcast about COVID. Just kidding. Only for this week. Only for this week. Promise. I'm your host, Kevin Palmer. Hey, if you're looking for ways to support us, we do have a PayPal that I've decided to set up in lieu of the Patreon. Again, if you're kind of new around here, we had a Patreon set up, but with Wes making the departure for the next few months, we decided that the best course of action would be to set up something where you can more directly support us and not at the monthly level or not at a monthly rate, because we don't think we're going to be producing any content that is worth paying for. However, running a podcast, a website, and software and equipment that we pay for and rent, that still costs money. So if you're looking for ways to support us, you can do paypal.me/thelifemidwest, and we'll be talking about that every week, and anyone who donates gets a shout out. Speaking of shout outs, I do want to shout out Derpadu at the $5 level of our Patreon, which we will continue to shout him out through the end of August since he's paid up through August. So we really appreciate you, man. If you're looking for free ways to support us, we do have all major social platforms. You can reach out to us at The Life Midwest, all lowercase, no underscores, no spaces, none of that bullshit. We got lucky. No new emails this week to read of, but if you ever do want to email us, it's support@thelifemidwest.com. We really appreciate that, because a lot of time it's, we're looking for feedback, but I think also, some great conversations can stem from those emails. We had a full episode on the one that Derpadu sent us, so we really appreciate that. If you've got the time to type something up and send it to us, we really appreciate that. No new reviews to speak of this week either. We still rocking the 6 5-star reviews on iTunes, as well as the one written review from Team Lados. I read it every week, mostly because I'm looking to see if we have any other reviews. But then I'm like, hey, I'm already here, so I just read it. So shout out to Team Lados as well. So before we start wrapping up here towards the end of the show, I do want to talk about a little bit more about the I keep referring to it as the Laura Skibas of the situation that we're talking about, which is the existential crisis that is born from COVID. And again, because I think it could go one of two ways. I think you can realize how much you hate your life, or really have too much time to reflect on all the quote unquote mistakes that you feel that you've made, or you can use it as a time to really come alive with your passions and start doing what you really love, like Laura did. If you don't know what I'm talking about, again, tune into episode 30. My friend Laura, we talked a lot about where photography really took off for her. It was something that she always did. She was on the yearbook team. She was actually the yearbook editor, I believe she said. And the things that have been born from that since, we've done work with her when we first adopted Mac. And I know that she also shot my best friend's wedding as well. And just some phenomenal memories and moments were captured from that. And I think, here's what I think. I think Laura's story is so inspiring, and the reason why I wanted to bring this topic to light this week is because I think everyone has that gift inside of them. Even if you're not like a spiritual person, like I know a lot of people use the phrase God-given talent, even if you don't have like a spiritual belief of some sort and in like a higher power or whatnot, like that's fine. But I think everyone has that one talent. And I think too many people associate it to their job. Too many people are like, oh, I'm good with people. I'm good with socializing. I'm talking about your God-given talent. Yes, I'm going to use that phrase, to produce joy in this world for yourself and for others. Sure, you might be a social person. That's great. But what are you really good at? What are you really passionate about? It doesn't have to be something that you do right now. Maybe it's something that you used to do. Maybe it's something that you put away for, the growth of your family or a job or something. And maybe that's led you to where you are now as far as being unhappy in the pandemic. I don't know. I don't want to make a whole lot of stretches here. But what I do want to get at is I think that too many of us have forgotten about that passion and what we actually love doing. Whether COVID had us lose sight of that, or whether we lost sight of it and then COVID happened. I'm not, because COVID isn't like necessarily like this fork in the road as far as like you went one way or the other, right? I know I'm making it sound like it is, because I think that's where most people ended up going. I think most people ended up going one way or the other through the situations caused by the pandemic, but I don't think it was everybody. But the subject matter of today and the talking points of today are largely shaped around those two different groups of people. And I just want you to sit there for a second and think about, like, why did I stop doing that thing? Because most people know what it is, especially once you get it out of your 20s. Like, most people know like what their one thing is that they're actually passionate about, whether they did it, whether they don't do it anymore or whatnot. Most people have it. And I just want you to sit for a second, because you probably don't spend a lot of time reflecting in a healthy manner that's not beating up on yourself. I want you to sit and think about that. What is the thing that I'm really, really into? I have a lot of talents. Here, I'll help you out. I have a lot of talents, right? I run a podcast. I'm a musician. I play several different instruments. I love playing video games. I love building computers. I love troubleshooting computers. I love technology and learning about new technology. I'm going to school to be a hardware engineer. I'm learning about cryptocurrency and how that's become a big passion of mine is cryptocurrency and the market and mining and all of that fun stuff. I have a lot of passion points. Maybe you're not like me and you don't have 6 or 7. That's fine. But you probably have one. I want you to sit there and think about what that one really is without here's the stipulation, without actually beating yourself up and saying like, oh no, that's not it, because I'm not that good at that. The fuck you're not. You know why you're not good at it? Because you stopped doing it. You know why you're not good at it? Because you gave it up for something else. Congratulations. Now you're in that first group of people in the pandemic who hates the lives that they've built. And they're wallowing around in their self-pity because of the choices that they've made. And I'm going to get into that a little bit before we start wrapping up the show here. But my point is this: you have something inside of you that yearns for some sort of passion, whether that's building or renovating your home or home improvement, writing, drawing, doodling. I'm not saying go out and start an LLC like doodling and selling it on Etsy, but use the time when life gets shitty to tap into those passions, those things that make you happy. Because otherwise you're just going to be angry all the time. You don't want to be that person at Starbucks who just throws a pitch fit because white mochas went up 10 cents again. Like, yeah, it's annoying. We all get it. It's already $5.95 for a fucking venti. Depending on where you live, participating locations may vary. Still, what I'm getting at here with the whole Starbucks thing is that we have freedoms in life to make choices, right? And we must live with those choices. We have to live with the fact that we react negatively to things that aren't going to matter in 5 years and shouldn't build life choices around sadness, disappointment, anger, or without a second more reasonable and logical thought. I will argue to my grave that doing so is how you end up realizing how much of your life sucks and you hate so many of the choices that you made that brought you to where you are today. Because you spent too much time getting caught up in shit that doesn't matter. Pissing contests with people who didn't even know they were in a pissing contest with you. I know I just made quite a jump from Starbucks, but let me give you an example. Okay. Aside from the whole pissing contest. You're mad at your parents because they won't pay for your college. Maybe they can't, maybe they won't. And maybe they won't and want to teach you about responsibility and to pay for it yourself, quote unquote, like they did. But regardless, now you're angry, and in that moment you decide you're not going to go to college because your parents aren't doing you a solid like all of your friends' parents are. I'm sure you can see where this is headed. This is not about making choices out of haste, anger, and emotion, though. What my point is that even if you're sitting here listening to this podcast, realizing that you hate your job you've been working for the last 10 years, you hate the degree your parents talked you into pursuing, you fight your spouse every day, you're always angry and impatient with your kids, you can do something about it. You. sitting there in the driver's seat, listening to this podcast. You at home, getting dinner ready for your family, listening to this podcast. You resting in bed because you've had a shitty day. You listening to this podcast. In any other context that you fit into, I'm talking to you. I'm always talking to you. You can do something about it. Because I'm going to tell you something. I don't care if you're 18 or 80. You still have today to make that change. And even if that change takes more than a day to make, it's never a good enough reason to turn and look the other way from an opportunity to change your own life. And we're going to talk more about this next week. But it is a piece of it is a piece of today. But I'm going to tell you something else. That job, that degree, your arguments with your spouse, your shitty relationship with your kids, it's your fucking fault. Not because it's nobody else's responsibility, but because it was your responsibility to choose how you reacted to the cards that you were figuratively dealt and how you responded to them. You can't control how other people act in life, but you can control how you respond to how people act in life. You may have started that job 10 years ago because you needed the money more than anything else, but you could have taken it and immediately looked elsewhere, but you didn't. You may have done what your parents asked and pursued the degree that they wanted you to, but did you ever stand up for yourself? Did you ever respectfully but passionately have an open conversation about how you think insert major here is your true calling and defended your own values assertively? You may not be in the wrong with what you and your spouse are endlessly fighting over, but do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? You may have a shitty relationship with your kids, but ask yourself, what can I do better in that relationship? Even if they're a teenager and they're just this monstrous little shit that just thinks they know better and that they're invincible. What can you do to strengthen that relationship? I think that's what we forget about. So sitting there and beating yourself up for the choices that you've made is part of turning the ship around. But eventually that ship has finished turning and is about face and is ready to move in that new direction. And it's then that I ask you, are you the captain of your own ship? And are you ready to set sail? If you're ready to set sail, come on a journey with me next week. We're going to be talking about how to turn your life around, how to make that change and say, you know what, this isn't how things are going to be. I'm really, really excited to talk about it, and I hope you'll join me. In the meantime, we got to get to the shout outs. I want to shout out Wes Shirley, who's working his ass off, getting ready to go to Thailand in October. Less than 2 months away. Less than 2 months away. That's crazy to think about who's going to be there. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, tune into episode 29. Our friend Wes talks about everything that he's up to and going to be up to over the next couple of months. We are going to shift gears a little bit over the coming months with, I want to focus on more of an inspirational and personal improvement, sort of like a motivational speaker, but I don't know how to get certified on that. So I'm just going to do a podcast instead. Hey, we're still going to do the My Friend series though. Have a few people lined up for that. I'm very excited about that, talking about life and the Midwestern perspective on life, or maybe the Midwest hasn't had an impact on them at all. Who the hell knows? That's what we're here to find out. So regardless, no one's going to convince me that it's called pop instead of soda. So you just don't even bother trying to get on the show if that's all you're going to do. So I also want to give a big shout out to my partner in crime in life, my other half, Ashley. Give her some love if you're friends with her on social media. It is her 23rd birthday as of 2 days ago. Nobody likes you when you're 23. Insert the Blink-182 song, but you know what? We all do here at the show. So love you, Ash, and we're going to make sure that Thursday was a great day because this is live. Until then, folks, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Don't forget to call your mom. Have a good one. And I will see you guys next week. Again, we'll be talking about how to set sail on that ship now that it's done turning around. We look forward to having you then next week. Tune in on Saturday and every Saturday moving forward here on the Life Midwest podcast. Take care. Have a good one.